That's a great question, and a really difficult question to answer. I spent a good like 2 3 hours talking with Natalie Dormer, who was in Game of Thrones. She
Who
played
did you
she,
play?
she played Marjorie Tyrell.
Oh, that's my girlfriend.
Yeah,
Oh, I love Lady
I
Margaery.
should have mentioned I knew you. I
What's wrong with you,
what a
man?
what a mistake. But no, she was just
Was she as kind in real life as she is in the show?
disarmingly lovely, and that was
Wow.
that was so memorable. I mean, other than the fact that it's her, because it was just her in a room, and I was like there talking to her in person about two projects that couldn't have been more different. There was a movie called In Darkness she made with her then fiance Anthony Byrne. That was like a thriller where she was playing this blind musician who overhears a murder. And then there was this Amazon series that was coming out the same day that was an adaptation of a mystery novel called Picnic at Hanging Rock. Uh, and
Sounds like a mystery for sure.
yeah, I mean, it's like these girls on a school trip who go up to this rock while they're out on a picnic with their school and vanish into thin air. And no one can figure out what happened to them. And she plays the headmistress at the school who's trying to figure out what happened to these girls. And so, these were two very different projects that she was very passionate about. And she was just such a generous interview. She just answered all of these questions about kind of her career, what it was like working on Game of Thrones, and what it was like to be working on these specific series. And, working in covering pop culture, you talk to a lot of big personalities. And some people,
A lot of ego.
yeah, a lot of ego, sometimes rightly so. And some people make more accommodations for you, make more time for you than others. And she stood out because she was just such a kind presence. Hi, my name is Isaac Feldberg, and this is my golden hour.
Oh, oh God, what's going on? Where am I going? Oh. Dad?
Yes, my son. I am Deuce, the deer god.
I'm so confused. Who am I?
Derek. Your true name is Dercules. Dercules.
Wait, what?
Yes. You are Dercules, the god of the forest. Season 5. Hosted by your favorite podcast host, Big Bochi. You already know the deal, mother. What's up?
Okay. Hey, everybody. Before we start, I want to say, hey, this is Conor Holway of the Golden Hours podcast. And if you by chance get any sort of value from this episode, whether you laugh, you cry, you're thoroughly entertained, or you learn something, all we ask is that you just share it with a friend. That's it. And if you don't have friends, you shouldn't be.
Here?
You should be listening to podcasts. I was going to say, you should probably go make some friends. Additionally, let's address the two elephants in the room before I introduce our guest. Big Fresh, let's start with you.
Yo, Big Fresh checking in for another episode.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm new.
Sarah, welcome. Sarah's a young journalistic phenom, and we have a journalistic expert to our right. So I said, hey, man, this is probably a good episode for you to start on. And Sarah is currently attending Northeastern. And Sarah, I don't want to misquote, but you're a sophomore?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And did you already declare your major?
Yes. I'm a journalism major.
Okay, so this is like a perfect episode because that's what you did, right?
Yeah, I was a journalism major, media and screen studies minor.
Fire. So listen, my guest tonight is an co-classmate, an ex-classmate of mine, Isaac Feldberg, and me and Isaac have not seen each other since high school. But since high school, Isaac, I've been seeing a lot of his articles pop up online, and I've been totally fascinated by a lot of stuff you've been covering, man. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, man. You're very official. Grad dream big things.
Do you want to just give a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Isaac Feldberg. I am a freelance journalist in the Boston area currently. I write for the Boston Globe. I write for Fortune magazine. I interned at Entertainment Weekly in LA 2 summers ago. Yeah.
What was that like? Did you love it?
Oh, that was crazy. I mean, LA is just such a playground. It's such a cool place to be for someone who's interested in film.
Where were you staying in the city?
I was bouncing all over. I had a crazy summer, but I was first over by UCLA, and then I was out by Culver City. Do you know LA?
Yeah, I was out there like 3 weeks ago. I stayed in Culver City. I loved it.
Culver City's great because it's like an actual city. I mean, I feel like LA...
It's like Cambridge to Boston, kind of.
Perfect metaphor, because, I mean, LA is just like a bunch of cities connected by freeways more than it is one place.
And I do not know how people could maneuver there full time if they did not have a car.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't when I was out there, and it was kind of a trek. I was just doing those electric scooters that they tried to bring into Cambridge. The Lime and the Bird. I was riding those all over the city, and it was crazy.
Accidents?
Luckily, no. I mean, I probably wouldn't be here if there had been. Those things do not give you much protection.
At all, dude.
No. But yeah, I wouldn't do that again. I would do LA much smarter if I did it in the future. But while I was there, I mean, being at Entertainment Weekly, I grew up reading that magazine. It was a very cool experience.
Were you staying off of Venice Boulevard close at all when you were in Culver?
Not that close to Venice Boulevard, but I did spend some time around there, which is a really cool stretch.
Well, Sony Studio is like right there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know exactly what your duties were with Entertainment Weekly, but like, did they have you bounced around to a bunch of different movie sets, or what were you specifically doing?
I was doing a lot of kind of digital first news. So I was really in their office, which is on Wilshire Boulevard. And, occasionally I would go out, do screenings on like the studio lots. I did a few interviews, which were usually more around the main hotels in LA. But primarily I was just around the office, kind of helping them put together the physical magazine. Because, I mean, when I did this internship, they were a weekly, Entertainment Weekly. They've since kind of shifted to be a monthly with some digital special sections that go out weekly. But
why is that? Why do they shift to less frequent?
Well, I mean, you could get into a whole conversation about the challenges facing journalism as a profession right now, but the biggest thing is just that print as a medium is not, it's heading that way. It's just not that viable right now because there hasn't been a way to really get back the ground that journalistic publications ceded when the internet came on the scene. Previously to that, you could subscribe for your news and you paid for it. It was something that you had to really have as an exchange to get access to information about the world you were living in. But the internet kind of made that free, and a lot of publications made the mistake of giving away what they'd previously been charging for. And you can't really kind of, put that back in the bottle.
When you were at Entertainment Weekly, was there any discussion about their employees learning how to create their own content via popular digital platforms like Facebook, Instagram?
Social media?
Yeah, just like, would they teach you how to make your own podcast or write your own blog or set up your own website?
No, I mean, when I was with Entertainment Weekly, I was in more of an intern capacity, so I was helping them with everything that they were already working on. There's certainly a push at publications like Entertainment Weekly to get some of their staffers, the people who actually kind of have the title cards there, to be on podcasts, to launch their own, to kind of branch into multimedia. One of the real things I feel like I've learned through coming up at Northeastern in the journalism program there, being at the Globe, spending some time at Entertainment Weekly, is just that it's very important for journalists right now, people in really any profession, but especially ones that involve the written word, to be well-rounded, to be able to work in video, work in audio, and to...
You take photo now, right?
I do take photos.
What are you shooting on?
I'm shooting on a Nikon.
Nikon what?
D2-300.
Okay. What are we doing for lenses?
Yeah, you're getting into the upper end of my technical skill there. I'm kind of a little bit new to it, but enjoying kind of playing around. I've shot a couple of stories that I've worked on for the Globe, but primarily the Globe actually has its own photo department still. So you input a photo request, photographers come out with these massive flashy cameras. It's very impressive, but it's something I'm really trying to learn more about.
That seems somewhat impractical, though. If they, like, every time you have a story, you have to call photographers and say, hey, come take a picture of this. Why couldn't you just, like, pull out your iPhone and say, okay, cool, here's the story?
Well, I mean, photographers make an entire living working at newspapers by themselves. So and at some publications that isn't the case, but at a publication like the Globe, the photo department is still so dedicated that if reporters were going out and shooting their own photos and just doing all of that work, it would render their work obsolete. And photographers are held to a pretty high standard at the Globe. There's really that kind of philosophy of photography that you can tell an entire story in one photograph.
Absolutely, but you know what I'm saying, though.
Oh no, I completely do. It's another one of those questions of how you're diverting resources and how you're allocating resources. I'm in awe of the Globe photographers. I could never really do what they do, but it is a question, especially because camera, like iPhone camera technology, has just become so much more capable.
I mean, the new camera's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't have the newest phone, but I'm considering getting it just because of the photo capacities that it would allow.
3 cameras.
Yeah.
Two selfie cameras?
Just one, I think.
But it's 3 cameras,
3 on
right?
the back, yeah.
4K.
Probably.
And I think it shoots video at 120 frames a second. And you can slow it all the way down.
1080p or
At 4K, I think 120.
4K.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is like, in technical terms, like the same capacity as probably what some of the Globe photographers are shooting on anyway, which is wild. Apple's taking over the world,
Yeah,
man.
they really are. I mean, they're also, just speaking of that in terms of the entertainment landscape, I think
do they have a streaming service?
they do. They do. They just launched a streaming service earlier this month, like an Apple TV Plus platform. Luckily, they didn't pull a U2 and kind of download all of the episodes onto our phones automatically and just break everyone's storage. Do you remember that? I think that we were in high school when they did that.
What was the name of the album?
Songs of Innocence.
So what Isaac is referencing is like YouTube pretty much hacked the mainframe, and they like everyone had YouTube albums on their phone because they worked out some deal with Apple that said, okay, everyone's gonna have access to this automatically.
Yeah,
right?
and everyone fucking hated it because it's
There's
YouTube.
also that genius marketing though. It's like guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, no, it really. Oh, can I swear on this? By the way,
that's fine.
Okay, cool. Should have asked.
Shit.
I mean, if I couldn't, at least it was in service of describing you two, which I'm happy about. But yeah, no, I mean, Apple's really moving into the streaming game. Everyone's moving into the streaming game, but it got like Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon to lead its main show, which was actually about morning news talk shows.
What is that called?
It's called The Morning Show, creatively.
Do you think it does service to morning news and journalism?
No, not really. I think it's more of a drama set in that environment. So it's, it's soapy. All of the characters have hidden alliances. All of them have these ties that are binding them together.
Sabotage, all that.
Yeah, well, it is kind of, I don't know if you ever watched The Newsroom, which was on HBO, but there's this kind of history of TV shows that take a look at behind the scenes of newsrooms and kind of where information is disseminated to the public that really plays up the drama of that and plays up the people who are kind of behind all of those stories and how their personal loyalties and alliances could be driving those. Who directed The Morning Show?
The Newsroom.
The Newsroom was Aaron Sorkin's series. He's the screenwriter who did The Social Network and all of that. Yeah, he's crazy.
Sorkin, man.
Yeah, he's great.
And so you're saying that you think the new Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Aniston series is a little watered down, or?
Well, I'm not sure I'd say watered down. I think that Apple is trying to move into doing prestige TV programming, and it's a vertical that it really doesn't know anything about. I mean, Apple isn't a content creator usually. It's a tech giant. And so I feel like a lot of the shows in its freshman class, it also has this super expensive dystopian show called C with Jason Momoa from Game of Thrones in it that is also Aquaman. Very good. Just it's this world where no one can see, and that's the basic premise of it. It's another one of those dystopian things. A lot of the Apple
Post-apocalyptic, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
A lot of the Apple TV shows kind of point to this company that is trying to enter that space because it wants to control the content that's there as well as the delivery vehicle for it. But they maybe just don't have it quite figured out yet how to make really good shows.
Don't you think there's usually a lapse of 2 or 3 years with a lot of these streaming platforms anyway, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll probably just come into their own after 3 years, 4 years.
Well, that's the question, because it really is this interesting landscape where people have been comparing Apple TV Plus to Netflix to Disney Plus. But what Apple TV Plus and Disney Plus have in common is they have virtually unlimited money to throw at this until it works. So
resources,
yeah,
and brand.
Yeah, I mean, they really can afford to do this for as long as they want until they figure it out. So I'm very hopeful that those will eventually result in some compelling TV shows.
Well, Facebook was doing streaming for a little bit, correct?
They were. Facebook Watch, I think, was the name of it.
And did it die out?
I don't think it's died out. I haven't really heard much about it. I know that Jessica Biel is in their latest, which is cool.
Watch that.
Yeah, it's Limetown, I think is the name of it. It's like a procedural cop mystery thing. I clearly haven't seen it from how I'm describing it.
Well, there was a pretty prevalent YouTuber named Jimmy Tatro. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not. Tell me about it.
Well, do you know Tatro?
He's like Vine and YouTube, right?
No, he was like one of the earliest YouTube sketch creators, and I used to totally be inspired by a lot of the stuff he was
Wasn't
doing.
he in the American Vandal show?
That was him.
Okay,
The first one, like,
yeah.
Who Drew the Dicks?
Yeah.
So he had a series that went big on YouTube called The Real Bros of Simi Valley. And then I don't want to misquote this, but I think there was some sort of bidding war for the third season of it, or the second season. And Facebook Watch, it was the first time they'd actually taken the business of a prevalent YouTube creator and brought it onto their platform.
Yeah.
But I wonder if what you're talking about with Apple and Disney is kind of the same space that Facebook's in right now, where they haven't ever really been the creators. They've just been the curators.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you've got companies that really want to be in a creative industry because there's a certain prestige to that, to be able to win awards, to be able to get people talking about an Apple TV show or Facebook TV show. I'm skewing away from saying that about Disney because I feel like Disney's a little bit different given its history. Yeah, I mean, Disney, when the profits from Fox titles that it has acquired after acquiring 20th Century Fox, when that's accounted in, Disney will account for more than 50% of the global box office this year, which is insane. It is a monopoly just by definition of the word.
Well, they've just done such a great job developing their franchises.
They have. I mean, they really hit upon this winning formula with the live action remakes of their classic movies.
What was your favorite?
Of the remakes?
Of the remakes.
The only one I actually liked was when Kenneth Branagh did a Cinderella update. I think it was in 2015. It had Lily James in it from Baby Driver, and that was just a very kind of classic take on that story, but it was very beautifully directed, put together. I really like that actress, and they did a great job with that. I didn't.
You weren't feeling it?
No, how about you? Did you like Beauty and the Beast?
Well, I love Emma Watson.
Yeah. I felt like the music of it didn't quite work for me. When they were like bursting into song, it didn't feel quite right. I mean, it's a tricky proposition to kind of make live action stuff that really was expressive in animation decades ago. I mean, you saw that kind of with The Lion King. I mean, it made over $1 billion. It's, I think, the second highest grossing movie of the year behind Endgame. But
You weren't feeling it?
well, the issue I have with a lot of those updates is that the part of the kind of the appeal of The Lion King, the original, was like Shakespeare with lions and Shakespeare in the animal kingdom. So because of that, you had to have animals delivering really human emotions and human kind of dramas and plots. And the animals, like their faces, like photorealism was not a goal of the original Lion King. Like they didn't
have the technology back then anyway.
I'm not sure that they would have used it, the original people who made the movie, even if they did, though. Because, I mean, the issue that I had with the new version of The Lion King was that they look too much like lions, so you don't believe it when they're talking with human voices and going through human power struggles.
But how much of that could be you desperate on nostalgia for some of the greatest movies of what we had growing up? You know, like, it will never really do the service. Like, I love 101 Dalmatians. I did not love the remake as much as I love the animation because you have such good memories of watching it growing up.
I think that's definitely a part of it. I mean, I think nostalgia is the vehicle primarily driving these movies into production. Like the feeling that people want to relive what they grew up with.
It totally sells.
It does. It sells really powerfully with Disney stuff specifically because it's linked to childhood. And I think that while it's great that a new generation of kids will get to see these movies, they just feel a little bit emptier to me without the kind of the hand-drawn animation and the emotion of that. There feels like something cold and calculated to me about the photorealism of the new Lion King. Yeah, a little bit more kind of industry.
For instance, do you think the new Terminator will be like very calculated and it will have less of the original appeal? Do you think it's just a play on money?
The new Terminator I thought was interesting because that really bombed when it opened. It opened earlier this month, I believe. I think the first weekend of November. People really rejected that movie, which was it was called Terminator: Dark Fate, and it brought James Cameron, the director who did the original Terminator. He's incredible, and he was brought back on to produce this entry. Arnold Schwarzenegger was back in it. Linda Hamilton, who was the original Sarah Connor, was back in it. And no one really cared. No one went to go see it. It lost probably around $75 million for Skydance, the studio that put it out, when you put together the budget and the marketing versus what it actually returned. And I really think it just speaks to the fact that these franchises, people are nostalgic for certain franchises more than others. And there is a point of diminishing returns if you continually reboot something. I think there were 3 other Terminator movies after the first one and T2, and each of them was worse than the last in terms of how they actually played. And I feel like audiences got tired and they're like, do I really need another Terminator reboot?
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't as jacked as he once was. But when I was out in LA, the marketing play on it was crazy. It was everywhere you went. It was the new Terminator movie. Have you guys seen Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
You know that the bit in Tropic Thunder where it's like Scorcher 1, Scorcher 2. It's like going all over Ben Stiller's like old movies. Yeah. And it's like Scorcher, Frozen Earth. And then his relationship with Matthew McConaughey is just how his career is tanking just because they keep trying to reboot the same movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think 22 Jump Street played on that as well when they at the end when they had all of their sequels.
Yeah, what were they like? They're like, we're going to law school.
Yeah. And it just got more and more ridiculous because that's sometimes what Hollywood does. There's some truth in that because it costs a tremendous amount of money to make a movie. It is always a financial investment, and it is way typically, or at least the traditional thinking goes, safer to bet on something that's a pre-existing property that people know. So you don't have to sell them on an original idea, then get them out to the theater. You kind of can shortcut a step if you've got a franchise that has already made money before.
So with that being said, this year, what were your favorite standalone non-franchise movies?
Non-franchise movies. There's this increasing divide between like the blockbuster Hollywood movies. Some of them are non-franchise, some of them are franchise, and then there's like indie movies that are smaller.
I mean, like in the realm of like a Moonlight.
Moonlight.
Like that type of realm of movie, or like a Green Book.
Okay.
Like any movie with Mahershala Ali in it.
Yeah, no, those. He's tremendous, and in terms of that, I think this has actually been a really strong year for those smaller movies, especially foreign movies. I mean, the Farewell and Parasite. I'm not sure if you've seen either of those two yet.
I love Parasite. I was about to ask you about that, but
yeah,
that was like one of the movies. Like I don't really watch a lot of foreign films, but it's like a Korean drama or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. What would you call that movie? It's like every single genre.
Yeah, it really has a little bit of everything, but I thought that one was like really.
Saw it in theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been. I mean, Parasite is the highest grossing non-English movie in America of the year so far. It's made, I believe, last time I checked, over $12 million, which is
against what budget?
Against, I believe it was like a $5 million budget. And that's just domestic returns in the U.S. it is made just I think it has crossed at least the 35 million, I want to say $40 million mark globally. Whoa. It is a huge hit. And kind of points to what I'm seeing a lot this year, which is that people are more willing to go out to the movies for an original idea, even with subtitles, which used to, according to Hollywood logic, just be the kiss of death for a movie if it had subtitles and wasn't in English. American audiences weren't thought to really reward movies that weren't in English.
How do they market that domestically? How do marketers say, hey, come watch this Korean movie, you won't understand a thing?
Honestly, for me, it was like word of mouth. Literally, everyone who were like movie buffs in my life, they were always like, you gotta watch Parasite.
Why did you go see it?
Well, Parasite had this really splashy debut at film festivals earlier in the year, and so there was a lot of positive word of mouth about it coming out of those festivals, which is where studios will send a movie if they want to build buzz, get it in front of people who work in the industry. Yeah, I saw it at New York Film Festival in late October. Well, actually early October. Sorry, I'm getting my months skewed, but Parasite had a really strong social media campaign by a distributor called Neon, which is kind of in the same realm as A24, which did Moonlight, in terms of distributing smaller movies to mid-budget movies, and focusing specifically on things that are either trendy in terms of their subject matter or kind of courting a younger audience in terms of some of the people who are in the movies.
What type of young people were they marketing towards? Young intellects?
For Parasite?
Yeah.
I think they're marketing... It's hard, but right, because you don't really know which demographic is going to come out to the movie until you actually get audience scores back. But I think primarily for movies like that, like Parasite, it's marketed towards young people who are interested in a diversity of voices and a diversity of stories. Young people who care about movies. Well, I'm not sure if intellects is the right term for it, because that kind of seems a little like it's making it a little bit elitist. I think that the appeal of Parasite and how much it's made so far points to the fact that it's resonating across this wide swath of audiences beyond the people who will usually go see those small movies.
Well, I'm generalizing, but from what I'm gathering from you two is that the film has somewhat of a complex plot, and correct?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it is a story about socioeconomic inequality, essentially. It's a really funny, dark, sometimes frightening movie about these two families kind of in an upstairs downstairs situation where one of them is very privileged, very wealthy. One of them has no money, lives in poverty, and it essentially explores what happens when the family that's in poverty manages to infiltrate this house owned by the wealthier family, essentially replacing their servants.
Cool. So for you, because so at a certain point, I don't know if I told you this, but I actually made a film which won some big film festivals. Pretty wild.
That's very cool.
Thank you. Dirt off my shoulder. But
do you want to talk about your film at all?
No. It's a segue. My question is, you frequently, as a film critic, you're constantly dissecting film. You're constantly looking at it like it's an essay. Are you ever able to just chill and put your feet up and just watch a movie?
Yeah, I mean, all the time.
I don't know if I like that so much.
Well, I think when I'm writing about movies, I'm writing about my response to them. And there's some movies that are kind of built as crowd pleasers, and I think that really every movie that's made is worth study, even those movies, because they always, contain certain choices made by the directors and the actors and the screenwriters. And that's kind of what I enjoy doing. I really enjoy looking at movies and talking about them just because I love them. I think they're interesting. I think there's so many.
The answer is no. So this
well,
has a deeper meaning.
I think that when someone makes a movie and spends a lot of money on it, even if the movie is the newest Marvel thing, there has been some sort of logic employed. And, when there isn't that logic, or when it just feels completely empty, that's worth noting as well.
Give me one where you were just like, dude, what was that?
Jeez, this has actually been a pretty great year in terms of there not being that many movies that I feel like are completely empty.
Well, I do research for all the guests, but I saw some of your Rotten Tomatoes reviews. You gave someone a scalding one. I gotta pull it up.
It depends when it's from, because even before Northeastern, I think when I was in high school with you, I was writing for a site called We Got This Covered.
Oh, no way.
Mm-hmm. And I was writing stuff on Rotten Tomatoes back then, and I think my view.
Right, the Will Smith movie.
Yeah.
You were not feeling that. He said, ultimately, Bright simply lacks the screenwriting smarts to capitalize on the social commentary in its setup that it so nakedly attempts to harness.
Bright, that's a deep cut. I mean, Bright was that 2015, 2016?
That was when Netflix started making movies.
It was a while ago, and I think
at the pretty recent, no?
Bright, it may have been 2017. I wouldn't park it as more recently than that.
Tucked in the back of your mind, huh? You don't ever want to think about that one again.
Well, Bright was one of these really frustrating movies where it was like this have you seen Bright?
I've seen the advertising for it with Will Smith, and there's like an orc who's a cop.
Yeah, it's this world where there was this kind of Lord of the Rings-y conflict centuries prior between magical creatures like orcs and fairies and then people. And the movie kind of zips forward to modern day where everyone's living in this society with all of these uneasy tensions between species. So it's a weird kind of metaphor for just racial inequality, but also socioeconomic class struggle. And they kind of throw this fantasy thing into it. And it's not an inherently uninteresting idea, but from what I remember of the movie, and again, this was a while ago, there was like a scene where there was like a fairy who's kind of like battering on like one of those fly swatter lamps. And Will Smith comes out and hits it with the broom and says, "Fairy lives don't matter." And then goes to his cop car and then goes out on his adventure. And
it just rides into the distance.
Yeah, and that's like the opening of the movie. I think they put that in the trailer too. So they were going for something with it. I just don't really know what they're trying to say with that, whether the fairy is a metaphor for, oppressed classes, and Will Smith as the cop is like the oppressor, and it's like kind of having that message. But then it's also kind of a weird line that's played for laughs. It just kind of felt like something that was trading on socio-political relevance. I thought it was a little glib, a little bit like it was trafficking in that language without any real consciousness of what I was saying.
Do you ever worry about giving scalding reviews and then seeing one of the people you've given reviews about in public? Because I have a problem specifically. Essentially, a podcast is media. We try to be as authentic as possible, but I'm like very political. I'll never say anything bad about anybody on the show. Mm-hmm. As a critic, you have to share your perspective openly. Are you ever worried like, yo, Will Smith's gonna pull up on you and say, yo, bro, I wasn't really feeling that review on Bright Dog?
I mean, I'm sure he wasn't. If he read it, which I doubt he did. I mean,
shouts to you.
Well, it's like, Will Smith is an incredibly talented actor with a platform. I think he has bigger fish to fry, honestly, than a few negative reviews on a movie. Well, in terms of that, I try to only write, and I've gotten much better at this since I started. I try to only write reviews that speak to, what I feel looking at a film objectively in terms of its value, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. There are some critics who kind of get a little bit more personal than that and trash a director, trash everything they've done, trash their mother. It's like, and that's kind of not the style of writing that I like to do. I really do love movies. I never go into a movie hoping that it's bad. And so because of that, I feel like I only turn in articles that I would stand by if I was talking to the people who are either quoted in them or in reviews who the article is about.
When you write, what type of value are you attempting to produce for people?
When I write reviews or when I write,
When you write
journalism?
reviews, interviews, like what do you get from it personally?
I think
Besides it being your career, obviously.
well, the satisfaction I get out of writing about popular culture, writing about film and TV and music, is that I think popular culture says a lot about the country creating it and about the people consuming it. What's popular, what's not, what becomes a beloved film, what doesn't land. I think that pop culture is just such an interesting way to look at what's happening under the surface of a society. And I think that that's a reason we will always go to the movies. We will always listen to new music because it tells us something about each other. It gives us something to connect with and to. It helps us connect with each other. It's an amazing communication tool. And kind of writing about that, I just feel like will always be something that people are interested in. I feel like you could make a point about reviews maybe being less and less essential now that there are more and more of them and everyone can openly share their own opinions about a movie. But I think, valuable critique about art that is thought out, that is studied, that is based in something, I think people will always be interested in that because there's so much content out there and it's helpful to have a guide to know what to consume.
So I want to make sure I ask this so it's not offensive, but what legitimizes your critique as opposed to somebody else's? Like, what makes you actually able to be a film critic as opposed to me saying, yo, that movie was trash, or yo?
I can really only write from my perspective. I can write from my understanding of film as a medium, as music as a medium. I can write from my understanding of politics, of social life and society. And I try to weave that together in a compelling way that is fun for an audience to read and maybe tells them something or helps them frame something to themselves that they couldn't quite put their finger on before. But I in no way think that I have the most valuable voice in that conversation. And one of the things I think is increasingly happening with entertainment journalism is that there are more voices coming in. There are so many more people who are gaining visibility via blogs that they promote via social media, through podcasts like this. And I think it's a great thing because I think that for too long there's been this very limited kind of elitist flavor to film criticism, especially where it's, just like a group of white guys in a room discussing the movies that they feel best represent the form. And it's all very kind of cordoned off, and it is all very exclusionary.
I get it. So I had a writer up here later in the summer. His name's Dave Wedge. And he was actually the lead beat reporter for the Herald. And he covered the Boston Marathon bombings. He was the lead reporter for it. And so from his experience, because he was kind of the guy that was there for everything, he was there for the bombings, he was there for the whole chase and everything, he was able to write the book Boston Strong, which was then later adapted into Patriots Day. Mm-hmm. Would that be something, obviously, not given the terrible circumstance, but would you like to shift into that eventually? More formal writing or possibly adapting your own screenplays?
Yeah. I am very passionate about film as a medium. I don't know whether I would be able to do that. I don't know if I have the talent for it. I am. I am working on screenplays. I'm a freelance writer now. I'm not full-time employed by the Globe, Fortune, or anyone else, which comes with its own kind of perils and difficulties. Well, what it does is it gives you more freedom to pursue your own stuff. And I'm fascinated by film. I would love to be involved in that industry in a more real way. It's one of these things about, being in your early 20s, mid 20s, where I'm 24. How old are you now? You're 23. I feel like
birthday, September?
Yeah.
So you were like old for our grade.
I was a little bit, but And were you young for a grade?
No,
or
no,
you...
my birthday's in a month.
Okay, happy early birthday.
We'll go out.
Yeah.
We'll go watch some movies.
It'll be great. It'll be a good time to do it, end of the year. I think Uncut Gems will be out, so we could go see Adam Sandler.
Whoa. Oh, wait. Oh, he's got a new movie coming out.
Yeah,
With who?
really great. It's really just the Adam Sandler show. He's playing this jeweler who's in this race against time to try to close on this massive score that he's putting together. He's like this incredibly...
Did he write it?
He didn't. It's directed by the Safdie brothers, who are actually...
Whoa. Curveball.
Yeah, well, he has this dramatic role in it. I mean, I know Adam Sandler's done so many Netflix movies where he just like Punch Drunk Love. I can't speak clearly.
Well, you've been pretty eloquent this entire time, man.
Oh, thank you. Just not describing Adam Sandler titles, but I love that movie too, and I think he's an incredible dramatic actor when he chooses to be. I think it's a stroke. I think it's a stroke of genius. He's convinced Netflix that he can only make movies along the Amalfi Coast right now. Like, he just needs to be there. He needs to have sandals. He needs to have $100 million in his bank account and a mojito in his hand.
Is that where they shot The Do-Over?
I actually don't know where they shot The Do-Over. I know, like, Just Go With It, Murderously.
Do-Over up here. He said it was like a sick time producing it.
Oh, I'm sure. He actually just filmed something on the Cape as well, called Hubie Halloween, something like that.
Sounds like an Adam Sandler movie, man.
Hubie
Halloween.
He's got a lot of that, but Uncut Gems is a completely different kind of role for him. It's a dramatic role, and he's very good in it. He's just this very skeezy, conniving guy who is determined to move this rare diamond that he is just like he's trying to sell off, and he has these gangsters after him, and he's just really kind of up against the wall. But that's a really great movie that I would recommend seeing, since we were talking about movies earlier. Yeah.
Hey, you two have any questions? Sarah?
What advice would you give to, because I'm like 5 years ago I'm sophomore journalism major at Northeastern. What advice would you give to me?
She looks like she's desperate for some advice.
I think she's going to be just fine.
I think she'll be great.
I think internships like you're doing here are a tremendous thing. You get to kind of be involved at the ground level, see how something comes together. I would recommend figuring out what beat you're actually most interested in writing about. At Northeastern, you'll have a lot of opportunities. At whatever college you're at, or even if you're younger than that or in high school, there are different places that in journalism right now are so open to people who are trying to get in, trying to write stories, trying to share perspectives. Figure out what you're interested in actually talking about or writing about. And when you have that, or have an idea of something you'd like to try to figure out if it is that thing, just do it as much as you can, and you'll figure it out. That's about all I got.
That was great. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Big Freshy. Watch out. Big Fresh got some haymakers for questions. Heads up.
This one's just my own curiosity. But jumping back to the movies, do you review, or are you a fan of any like horror movies?
Yeah, I love horror movies.
What do you think of Midsummer? Did you like that one?
I did. I think Midsummer is a really kind of intense watch of a movie. It's this the second film by this director named Ari Aster. His last one was Hereditary last year. I don't know.
See, I really liked Hereditary, but Midsummer, I don't know. At the end, I was just like left feeling a little like empty and uneasy and like all sorts of feelings.
Hereditary is such a gut emotional punch of a movie. In terms of what it's about. It's so much about inherited trauma, so much about loss and grief. Midsommar especially is essentially a remake of The Wicker Man through the lens of a breakup. And it's, kind of unpleasant to watch in a lot of places, but I feel like it is this commitment to style over substance in terms of a step from Hereditary, which, he had the budget, he went and did it, he wanted to do it and show that he could direct something that visually compelling.
I think that's one thing I did like, is that most horror movies, it's like the typical thing is, it's like this dark house with this attic that you don't know what's there, but like the whole movie's just in broad daylight, and like, it's like terrifying stuff that's still happening. So
sounds kind of like Get Out, except not towards the end.
I think if you like took Get Out, but then took the intensity up like tenfold, that's what.
Okay, sounds like I won't be watching that. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not a horror guy?
Absolutely not. I won't eat, no shame in my game. I am not into horror movies.
What was the last horror movie you got dragged
Insidious.
to? Insidious?
Yes.
How did you feel about Insidious?
Still thinking about it today.
Yeah?
Wake up, see all the faces, see all the
Red-faced
screams.
demon?
Yep.
Whole thing? No?
Totally terrifying.
Not your thing?
Except the It remake did not scare me that much as the first one did.
Mm-hmm.
You feel?
Did you watch like the 90s thing with
Yep.
the clown? Yeah.
I was actually locked in a room and forced to watch it by my friend's older brothers on repeat. This is not a joke.
That's terrifying.
Absolutely.
How old were you?
No, now you know I channel the mania, man. Now you know I work so much. I can't get it out of my head, dude.
One day, the clown will stop chasing you.
He goes,
One day.
beep, beep, Georgie, beep, beep.
That's actually not a bad impression.
It's terrifying, but the twist makes no sense at the end that he's a spider. Like, come on, dude. The clown was a spider. Stephen King, you're off the sauce, brother.
He has always been off the sauce. That's one thing you can count on Stephen King for.
Is he off the sauce or on the sauce?
Depends what the sauce is.
He's on something.
He's definitely on something. I mean, you know,
And he's still
whatever
pumping books out.
whatever he's doing, it seems to be working for him, and so I'm sure he's gonna keep on doing it. He's just
Give me your favorite Stephen King.
My favorite Stephen King.
Non-popular.
book or movie.
Either.
Favorite book is The Stand, which
Yeah.
they are, I think, working on a TV series adaptation of. It's like his more post-apocalyptic than horror stuff, but it's just this massive tome of a book that I was completely compelled by. In terms of the movies, I think the best Stephen King movies are probably the ones that have the least to do with the books that they're based on. So like The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's original Shining is a classic, and Carrie, the original Carrie, is also
Carrie's
great.
terrifying.
Carrie's great. I love that movie.
What about Cujo?
Cujo's great too. Are you a
I've seen
dog
Cujo.
lover?
We-
And so that kind of
Yeah.
mastered you a bit?
Well, I thought it was... Are they Doberman? Is that what Cujo was? Or
Saint Bernard?
Saint
maybe?
Bernard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a hard time following the movie, but the book was great.
Yeah. It's that kind of Stephen King thing of just a normal community where something's just not quite right. In that case, it was the dog. I mean,
The other case, there's a clown in the sewer. It's
Yeah.
actually a spider.
Yeah,
Plot twist. Spoiler alert.
I know. It's like 4 hours of movie that you're just sparing your audiences from right there.
I know, it's terrifying. Okay, so the year is wrapping up. So what we discussed on the phone, which I think would be of hashtag values, you give me like your top 3 favorite streamed shows of the year.
Stream shows.
Yes, from streaming services, not from primetime television.
Okay.
And also, after that, I kind of want to talk about your Kendall Roy interview. That's sick, man.
Yeah, you're a Succession fan?
My mom watches it. I've seen bits and pieces, but I had no idea he was from Sudbury.
He's from LS. Like, he literally went to high school where we did. He knew Bill and Judy Plott, the drama teachers.
Oh, I thought it was John Germanotta. Was it?
He was in the drama department when we were there, and he was, I think, running it. The Plotts, I think, predated him a little bit, but they still had this kind of lasting influence on the drama department and the theater department at LS.
How old is he?
Is Jeremy Strong?
Yeah.
God, I think he's in his late 40s.
Okay, because I was gonna say, so him and Chris Evans, like they probably,
They didn't.
if they were the same year, Chris Evans, like Captain America, went to LS. So imagine if they were in the same year, they would have made a killer stage production.
I mean, what they have in common is those teachers, the Plotts. I mean, they worked with both. I mean, they have a lot of kids out in the world doing big things, and Chris Evans and Jeremy Strong are 2 of them for sure.
Well, actually, why don't we get into that right now? So, how do you land some of your biggest interviews? How do those happen? Like, did I just see you did a piece with Vanessa Hudgens?
I did.
That's
I
pretty
did.
sick.
Yeah, it was fun. That started as this kind of joke of you should do more coverage of holiday movies from my editor at Fortune, who was asking. We had gotten an email where she was doing a press day to promote this new Christmas movie on Netflix, which is
From
cool.
who, your editor?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, at Fortune, and With that one, it was pretty straightforward. We just reached out to Netflix. Netflix tries to make talent who are doing its series and its movies available so that it can get articles out ahead so that people know that the thing is coming out. And, you know, they called me on a Saturday, and I just talked with Vanessa Hudgens and her co-star for, I think, 15, 20 minutes. And,
On the phone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the phone. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit more circuitous than that. I mean, it's not just a straight connection with a press rep. Sometimes it's like, for example, with John Carpenter, I was like going through lots of different reps trying to track down his home phone number, and eventually I just found a number, called it, he picked up, and we talked.
Hustling, love it. I mean, I might make like 20 cold calls a day. I do it all the time.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's a journalistic instinct you probably have from doing this as well.
So what do you traditionally, what have some of your favorite interviews been?
That's a great question, and a really difficult question to answer. I spent a good 2-3 hours talking with Natalie Dormer, who was in Game of Thrones. She played Margaery, Tyrell.
Oh, that's my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Lady Margaery.
I should have mentioned I knew you.
What's wrong with you,
What a mistake. But no, she was just.
Was she as kind in real life as she is in the show?
Disarmingly lovely, and that was that was so memorable. I mean, other than the fact that it's her, because it was just her in a room, and I was there talking to her in person about 2 projects that couldn't have been more different. There was a movie called In Darkness she made with her then fiance Anthony Byrne. That was like a thriller where she was playing this blind musician who overhears a murder. And then there was this Amazon series that was coming out the same day that was an adaptation of a mystery novel called Picnic at Hanging Rock. And
sounds like a mystery for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like these girls on a school trip who go up to this rock while they're out on a picnic with their school and vanish into thin air. And no one can figure out what happened to them. And she plays the headmistress at the school who's trying to figure out what happened to these girls. And so, these were 2 very different projects that she was very passionate about. And she was just such a generous interview. She just answered all of these questions about kind of her career, what it was like working on Game of Thrones, and what it was like to be working on these specific series. And, working in covering pop culture, you talk to a lot of big personalities, and some people...
A lot of ego.
Yeah, a lot of ego, sometimes rightly so. And some people make more accommodations for you, make more time for you than others. And she stood out because she was just such a kind presence. So I'd say that was one. There's a time when Aretha Franklin called the Globe to connect with the music editor, and I was the co-op who picked up the phone and at first didn't believe it was Aretha Franklin. So,
whoa.
Because she wasn't even scheduled
for
an interview. I was like, okay, cool, Aretha Franklin. I was like,
you better RESPCT me.
I was just like, I, of course, it was this voice on the phone that was, okay, this might be official. So I literally had to, could you hold for a second? And then run around the section being like, are you trying to talk to Aretha Franklin? Are you trying to talk to Aretha Franklin? Because it was just not in any way the right number. But that was a fond memory of me as a dumb college sophomore, just not knowing what I was doing in the profession.
Pretty funny then. Okay, so give me 3 stream shows.
Right, I'm sorry, we got away from that.
And then I want you two to have yours ready too. To be honest, I have not watched a TV show all the way through this year, so this should be fun.
Well, I think that the Natasha Lyonne series on Netflix, Russian Doll, that came out earlier this year is phenomenal. She is playing this character. Natasha Lyonne was Nikki on Orange is the New Black, also on Netflix. But she's playing this woman who keeps reliving the same day over and keeps kind of a Groundhog Day-esque premise. And I don't want to say too much about it because part of the fun of that show is just where it goes. But it's just some of the best written comedy that I've seen this year so far.
Okay.
Next. There's a really hard-hitting drama also on Netflix called Unbelievable. that is an adaptation of a ProPublica article about a young woman who reported a sexual assault, and because of the way she was handled by the police who interviewed her, eventually recanted the accusation, only for cops in a different district years later to find a different case with very similar circumstances. And it's just, so much about the importance of believing survivors of assault. And it was just an incredibly powerful story, very harrowing watch, but masterfully directed and acted by a young actress named Caitlin Dever, who was also in Booksmart, which is a comedy that opened earlier this year that more people need to see because it's just a great...
Booksmart's your third.
Booksmart's a movie. Yeah, but, if you want that to count as my third, Booksmart's on Hulu now, streaming, so you can go watch it.
What would your third be?
Oh, God.
Succession?
Well, Succession isn't exactly streaming because it's on HBO, but
if you're on HBO Go...
If you're on HBO Go, if that counts, then absolutely Succession. I think Succession is remarkable. It's this, you talk about a show set within this incredibly privileged bubble of a rich, kind of Murdoch-esque family.
Family members turned on each other.
And the last thing you think that would be a comedy. But it is. And it's a hilarious, incredibly biting, dark satire of wealth and privilege and what these people who have this immense power through virtue of their money and upbringing, just how dysfunctional they are. It's essentially Arrested Development without the punchlines and voiceover, and it's fantastic.
And the recurring inside jokes.
Though there are those too.
But not... Arrested Development's masterful with that.
I think you should watch more Succession. I know you said you'd started it, but...
I've seen bits and pieces. I saw the end of season 2, so I know what happened, which is a curveball.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, all right, you two, let's do it. Sarah.
My favorite stream show is definitely Mindhunter on Netflix. Do you guys know it?
Yeah.
I heard that's a big hit.
It is. It's like, have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So it's about like...
Don't spoiler alert.
I won't,
Okay.
but it's about this guy who's trying to develop, it takes place in the 70s, I think, and so it's about a guy who's trying to develop the psychoanalytic part of like how does a serial killer's mind work, and so he has interviews with like a bunch of real life, like if you look them up, they are
like a Ted Bundy?
Exactly, like Ed Kemper, and if you look it up, they do a really
Stand-up guys.
They do a really good job of making them look just like how they looked in real life, and it's a good show. And I think the second season's even better than the first. Which
Mindhunter, Netflix, fresh.
I don't know. I liked Handmaid's Tale. I got into it pretty late, but I just finished catching up. But I also think the Watchmen series on HBO is pretty good. It's only like 4 episodes in right now, but
The Watchmen series?
yeah. Have you seen like the Watchmen movie?
It's like
The
superheroes,
big blue guy.
very gritty and dark.
The big blue guy?
Yeah.
You talking about like the genie from Aladdin? Oh, okay.
This is
Not quite.
This is like what, 2012, 2010.
Yeah. It was
Maybe.
Zack Snyder who directed. He would go on to direct Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman and those DC movies.
It
But
was marketed as that the yellow smiley face with like a bullet hole like bleeding down. Like you must have seen it somewhere. I don't know. Maybe.
it may have passed us by. I mean, this happened. I think Watchmen was 2009, so that would have been when we were in high school
Right.
or even leaving middle school. Yeah.
In teen center.
Yeah.
We were probably slow dancing with chicks.
Maybe you were.
Yeah, my fault.
No one's asked me yet the big question, which is how was Conor in high school? Which is
Someone ask it.
How was Conor in high school?
Conor was the class clown. I remember
That
this.
was.
You were just you always had a laugh. You always had a joke, and I just have so many memories of you never standing still. I
Still have ADHD to the day, man.
I remember just you bouncing around the library, antagonizing the librarians, not intentionally usually, but it was just
definitely a lot of that. What class do we have together? Mr. Cobbett, maybe?
Oh yeah,
Who did
Mr.
you-
Cobbett for law.
Yeah, for law junior year.
I think that must have been it. I'm trying to remember because I don't really have any memories of you in that class, but we definitely had classes together.
For sure. Well, I remember you writing for the forum.
Yeah.
I remember it was okay. Isaac's gonna be a writer one day. I knew that.
Yeah, the forum was, that was a great set of training wheels as well. High school newspaper. I remember we had.
You had deadlines you had to hit.
Yeah, well, we had the graffiti in the bathrooms. I remember was the major story while we were there.
What about the kids boozing for the Friday night football games?
Oh, I stayed away from that. I had a vested interest in not reporting that.
I was gonna say you don't want to snitch. That'd be bad. Okay, cool. Give me your number one movie.
Number one movie of the year?
Yes.
I go back and forth.
And can you do a fan favor for this one? Because listen, you're a really smart guy. You're very eloquent. But give me like a blockbuster for this one that everybody would see. That it's not like a crossword puzzle when they see it on screen.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the films I would say are that usually, but in terms of movies that were given like a big studio release, I think Crawl, which is essentially it's set in Florida. It's this woman trying to survive this house during a hurricane that is flooding with alligators.
Nice.
It is.
Now we're on the same speed, Isaac. Okay.
Crawl is a fucking blast of a movie. I loved that movie so much. It came out at the beginning of the summer, I believe in June, and is just this very kind of intense economical thriller that is, Kea Scodelario is the main actress in it. She was on Skins. If you ever watched Skins, she was in the Maze Runner movies.
I've done a really bad job seeing stuff this year.
No, it's okay. But you should see Crawl. I would say everyone should see Crawl. I also think it's Quentin Tarantino's favorite movie of the year.
Did you like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. That movie was just such a beautiful kind of dream to live inside of.
Tarantino in your face.
Yeah, I mean, that whole movie was just, for people who've loved his movies and kind of grown up with them, it was just this love letter to movie making that I was so glad he made, and had, Leo and Brad, like, what a great star power combo to have.
The best Tarantino shot ever, I'm going to give a little spoiler here, but it's at the end of Kill Bill Part 1. And Uma Thurman just kills Lucy Liu in the Shaolin Showdown.
In the garden?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she stabs her, right? And Tarantino never shows the blade going into the skin, but he cuts to a B-roll shot of a fountain that's regulated. That's just, all you can hear is just liquid, but you can't see the blood, and it's just genius directing. You're like, oh,
he's good at that. I mean, if you've seen Reservoir Dogs, there's this scene that's kind of become infamous of someone's ear being cut off, and there's so many people you'll talk to about that scene who will vividly remember how much they were disturbed by seeing an ear get cut off. You never actually see it happen on the screen, but it's such an intense effect, and he cuts so well around it that you feel like you've seen something really gross, even though you really haven't.
Like, another shot from him that's like so standout is in Django when the blood gets on the cotton.
Mm-hmm.
You know that?
Very loaded image.
Yeah, when Jamie Foxx is just like, where Django's just mowing down everybody on the plantation, and he just snipes someone from deep, and they never show the bullet hitting, but they show blood actually just splattering on the cotton. It's just like very vivid imagery.
Slave owner's blood. Yeah.
Which Kill Bill movie was it when Uma Thurman was in that coffin buried alive?
Both.
It was in both of them?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's at the start of 1 and the start of 2.
I think, okay, yeah. I think it might have been the start of 2, because that scene, like, I watched Kill Bill, like, very young. Like, I don't know, when it came out, I was probably like 9, 10 maybe. But that scene, like, haunted me, like, for a while. Like,
You don't want him buried alive.
No, not at all.
I feel you. I don't either. Yeah. While you were watching Kill Bill, I was stuck in the room watching it.
So Connor, what's your number one movie of the year?
That's a great question. I'll tell you something I saw recently, which I really liked, was Kingsman 2: The Golden Circle. I really enjoyed the CGI in it.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that dude's an awesome actor. I also loved the new Spider-Man. I thought it was like such smart writing to make it contemporary for kids. you know, it had like the whole social media tie-in, the simulation tie-in. I thought it was really clever, and I thought it was totally original too. And I thought Zendaya did a really good job just being this like cute, quirky, weird girl.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a tremendous actress as well.
Have you seen Euphoria?
Yeah, I have. Have you seen Euphoria as well?
Is it good?
I mean, I feel like everyone gets the kind of like, you know, reefer madness kind of movie about like how dangerous it is to be a kid. Like every generation gets one of those, and Euphoria is that kind of thing. Where,
what was our generation?
I mean, I think Euphoria kind of is, you know, Hollywood trying to capture what it was like for us kind of growing up, going through high school.
Project X was like the Euphoria before Euphoria?
Project X, wow, that's a deep cut. I completely forgot about that movie. But
I watched it alone.
Yeah?
Did you watch it with somebody?
I think I did. I think I watched that with like Doug Hoinstein.
Shout out to Doug.
Shout out to Doug. I needed to do it at least once.
Shout out to Jonah and shout out to Kev too.
Yeah, if they're listening somewhere out there.
I'll send it to them.
Yeah, why not? I mean, yeah, Project X was just this very kind of a riff on the found footage craze. They kind of did that as a house party, which is a kind of a fun technical feat to do. I remember that being a super fun movie. Euphoria is more, you know, about like the impossibly heightened drama of its teenage characters. I mean, they're all hooked on something. They're all having this like crazy, dangerous sex, and like all of them are just in constant peril. And there's a glamour to that the series really plays up that I think sometimes gets reflected by social media and Instagram and the glitz and the glamour and that kind of that feeling of wanting to explore the darker side of what it's like to live your life in an age where everything is up for presentation and everything is on social media and recorded.
Yeah, I remember. Did you see Project X?
Yeah.
That movie was sick. But I saw it alone after a high school dance, and I just seen the girl that I liked grinding with another dude, and I went home alone. It was the first time I ever drank, and I was just like,
Was this
high school's hard, man.
What dance was this?
I think it was the Purple Rave.
Oh my god.
It was like a dance devoted to like raising funds for the walk for, or what did they used to, what was that rally called they would do at Curtis?
Rally for Life?
Rally for Life. Wasn't that what the Purple Rave was for? It was for money from...
Might have been. For the... Was that American Cross? No. I can't remember the Purple Rave.
These kids were getting drunk for, like, philanthropist activities. Kids were crazy out there in the sticks, man.
Jamaica jamming.
Jamaica jamming. Nonetheless, man, I had a great time. Did you have fun?
Yeah, this was great. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks to that corporate shake, Isaac.
Hi, my name is Isaac Feldberg, and that was my golden hour.